Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. Members, I want to begin my remarks by commenting on how the bill before us today got to this stage. It is both right and necessary to do that because the process this bill went through before appearing on the order paper of this House was most irregular. Executive Office guidance and consultation is clear. It sets the standard for consultation at 12 weeks. Paragraphs 8 to 10 of the explanatory and financial memorandum deal with what passed for a consultation. This bill simply doesn't meet that. In my reckoning, it's 11 weeks, and 2 of them were the Christmas holidays. The Assembly Commission decided only to consult with parties who have representation on the Commission and never dared to let the public, or indeed parties not on the Commission, see the proposals, much less have their say. When we read the bill, it is quite obvious why that was. And I would ask the House to note that the names carried on the front of the bill represent all the parties on the Commission. It was the intention of Sinn Féin, the DUP, the UUP, Alliance and the SDLP to award themselves a massive pay rise. Members from all those parties have affixed their names to the cover of this bill. Regardless of what some may say or seek to do in terms of amendments, in the aftermath of the spotlight being shone on what they were up to, the intentions were clear. And I see that immediately after this debate, the Assembly will approve an ad hoc committee to consider the bill. Once again, the parties on the Commission are set to carve up the positions between themselves and keep those of us who, by our actions so far on this matter, really are committed to derailing the gravy train's intended destination. There are some provisions of the bill which are sensible. Parties on all sides of the House, I believe, will be able to cite examples of where the Independent Financial Review Panel got it wrong in the past. We had, for example, the ridiculous rule about not having a phone number or email address on the office sign, which has already been referred to. So to remove some of those powers from the Remuneration Board, as proposed in the opening clauses of the bill, is not something I have a great deal of issue with. However, it is when we get to the provisions which stipulate that the Remuneration Board must look at MLA salaries in context of salaries payable to MPs, MSPs in Scotland, members of the Welsh Parliament and members of both houses in the Republic, that I have a real problem with. When the Commission brought a motion before the Assembly paving the way for this bill, both Mr Carroll and myself exposed the plan to award MLAs a massive pay hike. Mr Butler claimed that the allegations about the pay rise were absolutely baseless. The truth was that, as the parties represented on the Commission already knew, the dice had been loaded in favour of MLAs getting a bumper pay deal. If, as Clause 3 of this bill stipulates, the Remuneration Board must have regard to the salaries payable in other legislators where members earn more than MLAs currently, the parties who brought forward this bill did so thinking the money was already in the bank. There is no other guidance in terms of what they must consider in terms of pay. The only thing which may stop it is the embarrassment which this corner of the House will cause you all. But that isn't the only ruse being pulled in this bill. Clause 5 opens the door for a former member of this Assembly to sit on the Remuneration Board. That represents a clear conflict of interest on 2 fronts. Firstly, one would assume that the former member had maintained some sort of relationship with the members of this House who would stand to benefit financially from the decisions of the Board. Secondly, as a former member, he or she would also benefit from pension determinations. Such a situation can't be allowed to go unchallenged. There was good reason why former MLAs were excluded from the original panel. Those reasons remain valid. It is noteworthy that the last Independent Financial Review Panel had just 3 members. If, as this bill anticipates, one of those members is a former MLA, well, that's a sizable chunk of its membership. Finally, I want to directly address a point made by Mr Clark when we last discussed this issue. In fairness, he did not seek to deny the fact that the Commission were on manoeuvres to award themselves a pay rise, so I will give him his honesty there. But when addressing this corner of the House, he asked, "There are many younger members who have young families to keep. Why should their pay not stay in kilter with that of their counterparts in other places?" Mr Clerk, let me answer that question. Firstly, as the motion brought by the member for West Belfast reminded us last week, there are people who are expected to get on by just a little more than their additional members' salaries that you receive on top of the commission that you get. So you have your MLA salary, you get your additional salary you have for being on the commission. I don't think there will be many people on carers allowance who will have much time for sob stories about the MLA struggling to raise their families on $52,500 before tax that every MLA gets, let alone the $64,500 chairs of committees are paid, the $90,500 ministers get, or the $124,500 paid to the First and Deputy First Ministers. An important additional point needs to be made in response to Mr Clark's point. Members of this Assembly do not deserve a pay rise to put them in line with members of other parliaments and assemblies because, uniquely, this Assembly has decided that there are vast areas of law and policy which it does not want to have any say over. And I do say, and picking up his point from earlier, the only legislative provision on pay in this bill is to consider other legislators' pay, all of which are higher. If this Assembly is so pompous to believe that it is just as important, just as competent as the legislators listed in Clause 3 of this bill before us, why then did the majority of members vote to give away lawmaking powers to Brussels, where no one from Northern Ireland has any say in the laws which govern something like 2/3 of our economy, unless or until members of this House have the self-respect to reclaim those laws, we shouldn't be treated like any other legislator. For those reasons, I will be opposing this bill, shaming those that brought forward, and I'm glad there has been a public outcry to call you out on it.